Now that's exactly what debt can feel like, dragging around a super heavy weight that makes it hard to achieve your goals. And you know, that's always true, but it's especially true if you're talking about retirement goals. Let's face it, too much debt is never a good thing, but it can be especially damaging in the years leading up to and during retirement. The question becomes, could debt be a danger to your own retirement goals? And if so, what can you do about it? It's time once again to tune out the hype and focus on the facts. Facts that matter to you, the income generation. Let's get started. Get ready to separate reality from myth.
With us, David Scranton.
David Scranton.
David Scranton.
David Scranton.
But David Scranton says, hey, not so fast.
How does it affect the markets? How does it affect the economy? Thanks to efficiencies in new technology and a staff of veteran analysts and portfolio managers, Sound Income Strategies strives to set new standards and bring institutional style investing to your portfolio. Hello, I'm David Scranton. You know, it should seem obvious that one of the most important priorities we should have as we approach retirement is to eliminate debt. And yet carrying too much debt into retirement and accumulating more debt during retirement are major problems for many Americans today. And that's truer now than in past years for a variety of reasons, all of which we'll address on today's show. But we'll also discuss some practical ways for reducing or eliminating debt in preparation for your retirement and preventing debt from becoming a problem once you're retired. Helping us today will be our guests, Samuel and Kirsty O'Banner, founders of Fresh Start Financial Education, as well as author and advisor Greg Sullivan. But first, let's talk about why pre- and post-retirement debts are problems faced today by so many Americans.
They called it a bucket list. We were supposed to make a list of all the things we wanted to do in our lives before we
kick the bucket. Cutesy.
Anyway, I wrote down things like make $1 million, first black president, you know, young man's wishes. I was gonna redo the list, but then...
Help a complete stranger for the good. Laugh until I cry. Not to be judgmental, but this is extremely weak.
These days, many people have a so-called bucket list that they carry into retirement and try to chip away at. And you know, that's nice. But many Americans today also have a bucket of debts that they also carry into retirement and are forced to try to chip away at. That, not so nice. And according to analysis by University of Michigan Retirement Research Center conducted by Magnify Money, a growing number of Americans are carrying heavy debt burdens into their 50s and beyond. Authors of the study say they found a number of debt trends that threaten to undermine the retirement goals of many of today's older Americans. For one thing, both the percentage of older Americans carrying debt and the amount of debt they're carrying are both increasing. According to the study, 20 years ago, roughly 37% of Americans age 46 to 61 carried debt. By comparison today, about 42% of Americans the same age carry debt. But that's not the scariest part. The scariest part is at a much, much higher debt-to-income ratio. Now, other studies have shown the problem's also increasing even for older Americans. The number of families in which the head of the household was 75 or older carrying debt rose to 60% from 2007 to 2016. And that percentage continues to rise according to a recent report by the Employee Benefit Research Institute in Washington, D.C. According to the same study, the share of homeowners age 65 and over still carrying mortgage debt nearly doubled between 1995 and 2016, rising from 22% all the way to a whopping 41%. But you know, the trend isn't entirely explained by higher mortgage costs. In fact, according to a breakdown of Magnify Money's analysis published in Forbes, nearly a third of older Americans, 32%, carry non-mortgage debt each month. Of that, a significant portion is credit card debt. And you know, carrying a large amount of credit card debt into retirement, we all know can be especially problematic. Why? Because typically credit card interest rates far outpace most investment returns. The average credit card interest rate today, even today, yes, is over 16%. And that's compared to the 4 to 6% average return rates most retirees can reasonably expect to earn from their investment portfolios depending upon their allocation or the risk level. That probably explains why, according to an analysis by Next Avenue, the average net worth of older Americans without credit card debt was $120,000 compared to just $68,000 amongst those with credit card debt. And for some people, new challenges in the modern age have created new sources of debt. For example, in the past few decades, technology and other changes in the workforce have forced many Americans to go back to school later in life and to rack up new student loan debts in the process. So, according to the Government Accountability Office, the number of Social Security recipients age 65 and over who've had their benefits reduced because their student loans, which had defaulted, increased by more than 500% between 2002 and 2015. And again, that's because garnishing Social Security benefits is one of several extreme measures the IRS can take if you default on federal student loans. Now, you probably already know that it can garnish employer wages and take away your state and federal tax rebates to put it toward unpaid loans, but it can also withhold up to 15% of your Social Security payments. Experts say there are a number of other reasons behind the scenes in burdensome debt among older Americans. One is easy access to money in the years leading up to the financial crisis. You know, between 2002 and 2007, the average American could walk into a bank and get a loan for just about anything or any amount. And this led to overextension not just on mortgages, but also on car loans and loans of all types. When the Great Recession subsequently struck, those whose retirement accounts were hit hardest by the stock market crash had to start resaving, and many were forced to start making only minimum payments on their loans. As a result, more debt has followed them further into their retirement years. Another issue is a significant rise in the cost of living. Back in the early 1990s, there were no cell phone or internet bills to pay, and gas was much cheaper back then. Today, there are more necessities, and they all cost more. And let's not forget that until very recently, wage growth was largely stagnant. In fact, another lingering that came in after the financial crisis was the stagnant wage growth. In recent years, many Americans have had to increase their debt load just to keep their heads above water. So the bottom line is this: debt near and during retirement has become a significant problem for more and more Americans in recent years. We'll talk about some of the specific ways that debt can sidetrack or even completely derail your retirement goals. We'll do that a little bit later in the show. And then we'll share some tips for getting a handle on your debt before that happens. Now it's time to welcome our first guest, Samuel and Kirsty Obanor. Samuel and Kirsty came to us several years ago through one of our income specialists and advisors, Michael Eastham of Fellowship Financial Group in Altamont Springs, Florida. Michael's actually been on the Income Generation many times. In this case, we booked Michael and the Obanors on Jerry Willis' show on Fox Business News. At that time, they were getting married, but actually had a plan to get out of debt. Today, not only are they debt-free, but they're actually the founders of Fresh Start Financial Education. Samuel and Kirsty, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, David. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
In fact, you probably noticed on the introduction to the show, we actually have Michael right on the introduction. He's part of the roll-in that comes every single week.
Yep.
Yes,
I
sir.
know you know that because you're regular viewers of the show and all. But, so I'm going to put you on the spot
All right.
a little bit here. And we're going to play a little newlywed game with you.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
And I'm going to be Bob Eubanks. Okay. Now
Okay.
I know you two are very young, obviously. So I have to ask the question.
Okay.
Even know who Bob Eubanks is?
You do.
You do? Oh, good. All right. I love it. That's perfect. That's what I was hoping I'd get for an answer. So, so tell me, how long have you been married?
Next month will be 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years. Congratulations.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Okay. So when you came into the relationship with debt, who had the debt?
It's me.
That was you?
Yep.
That was you?
was me.
Was the shoe collection, let me see there, is it shoes? Is that what it is?
No, it was a car,
Combination,
student loans, all kinds of other stuff.
All kinds of other stuff. Okay. So now how far into the relationship, Sam, did you figure out that this debt existed?
Within the first month of us dating, actually, because I was teaching a financial class helping people in our community eliminate debt. And I
Nice.
would meet with Kirsty on our date nights, and it just opened for a good conversation. How did your Tuesday night go? Well, this is what we discussed in class, and just kind of gradually made our way into that conversation because,
So you were subtle about bringing into a new relationship, which is good.
yeah.
And how did you accept that?
I thought it was awesome. It was funny because I had actually gone through a similar course to the one that he was teaching prior to meeting him. Didn't quite grasp it, but I was already familiar with the concept. So I thought it was interesting to meet him, and he was so enthusiastic about it. I thought, like, okay, this would be helpful in really getting on track this time.
So did you feel, and I just have to ask this, but did you feel at all embarrassed about having the debt early on in this relationship by any chance?
I did initially, but he was so gracious about it. He never made me feel inadequate or, he never made me feel bad about it. He embraced it, and he, shared his own story where he had struggled with the same thing before getting a hold of the principal. So he was really gracious about it, so he made it easy.
He made it easy and very approachable. And that's important because I find that a lot of the reasons why people struggle with debt is simply because they're afraid to admit it. They bury their head in the sand. They're embarrassed by it, and you really shouldn't be. The first step is admitting there's a problem, right? That's always the
Right.
first step.
Right.
So okay, so now you had open conversations about this in terms of how those conversations were how this debt was going to get fixed and eliminated over time. So you put a plan together,
We did.
and that plan consisted of you paying off the debt over how long of a period?
15 months. Our first 15 months of marriage, we paid off $50,531.83, give or take.
$50,000.
50,000.
But who's
50.
counting?
Paid off $50,000 in 15 months.
Yes, sir.
Wow, look at that. That is really good for you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So you paid that off.
Yes, sir.
And then what has that enabled you to do since then with the money? Now that you have that yoke off your back, what have you done?
Several things. Help others.
Absolutely.
It's freed us up to be generous in a greater capacity. We recently closed on our first home, and it's just created an avenue for us to, what else?
All kinds of things.
all types of
Travel.
travel.
Like he said, be generous.
It's just not that bondage
Yep.
of
That's
having
great.
that debt.
That's a
in
you
our
guys are a
lives.
great story. We have to take commercial break right now. We'll be right back. So I just stay put, don't move. And you stay with us also. We'll be right back with more on the income generation right after the commercial break. If you're near or in retirement, head over to theincomegeneration.com and download your special report written specifically for the needs of the income generation, again, those born before 1966. I'm David Scranton, and you've been watching The Income Generation. We'll see you all next Sunday. As we've seen, debt is a significant problem for many older Americans today, more so than in past decades. It's just one more of the many challenges unique to our generation, and just one more reason I believe a retirement strategy that addresses these unique challenges is absolutely essential. New problems are rarely ever solved using old approaches. It's also one more reason I believe it's important for investors over 50 to start working with a qualified advisor who specializes in retirement planning as soon as possible. So if paying down or preferably paying off your debt, if it's so critical heading into retirement, then the sooner you start that process, the better. And it's crucial for a number of reasons, which we'll discuss now. First, as I pointed out on previous shows, very often after a person does what I call a top-down financial analysis, they'll discover they'll be able to enjoy their same lifestyle after retirement for less money than it costs them today. Why? Because for most people, a number of expenses go away after retirement. Now, if you have specific retirement goals, such as traveling, that may bring your income needs back up just a bit. In either case, whatever portion of your retirement income is going to pay down lingering debts is obviously going to diminish your ability to maintain your lifestyle and to pursue those goals. And If you try to avoid that by simply making minimum payments, you'll only be paying more interest and digging a deeper and deeper debt hole, as I'm sure you're well aware. Even worse, many types of mortgages and other debts have interest rates that adjust upwards automatically after some time. That means even those minimum payments might just increase, possibly forcing you to siphon money away from other goals and reducing your lifestyle just to keep digging that very same hole. So if you should fall behind, that could lead to late fees and other penalties, pulling even more money away from your retirement goals. Let's face it, lingering debts can also make it much harder for retirees to manage the considerable and, yes, frequently unexpected medical expenses that are common for older Americans. According to a Federal Reserve Board report, 36% of all financial hardships experienced by Americans are the result of unexpected health expense. Now, I've discussed on previous shows how health care and medical costs increase at a much faster rate than the average rate of inflation, a fact that causes many retirees to underestimate how much they'll need to cover these medical costs over today what could be more than 30 years of retirement. And of course, one of the biggest but unfortunately most common consequences of carrying significant debt within 10 years or so of retirement or through retirement is just not being able to fully retire. Many Americans are forced not just to alter their retirement goals because of debt, whether it's delaying retirement or to work part-time during retirement, but for some it can actually be an indefinite delay if they fail to create a viable, workable plan for eliminating debt, or at least making it more manageable within their overall retirement strategy. So with that in mind, I again want to stress the importance of starting this process sooner rather than later if you think that debt might even possibly be or might even possibly become a hindrance to your retirement goals. A qualified advisor who specializes in working with clients in or near retirement can help you lay out a plan for paying down as much debt as possible while you're still working, thereby paving the way for a retirement strategy that protects your principal while generating the income you need to achieve your goals. Now, if you're already retired, it may seem like it's too late to do anything about debt. But you know, there are options available that can help you reduce your burden and get you closer to leading the kind of retirement you want. That is a retirement, in many cases, hopefully, free of the shadow of unmanageable debt. And we'll talk more about that coming up in just a moment. Well, it's time again to welcome back Samuel and Kirsty Obanor. So you were talking about some of the things that you're able to do,
Yes, sir.
which I love. So part of it is you said, you know, I want to do good things for people.
Absolutely.
And you've been able to do some. So just
Right.
give me an example of maybe one nice thing that you were able to do now that you were able to free up some of that cash flow.
Sure. I'll give an example. There's been many, but go ahead. You had
Oh.
something in mind?
Most recently, we had a family member that we had found out had taken out a loan that was really putting a burden on her, and we were able to take care of that, pay it off for her, you know, and that was really special to be able to do things like that, you know.
That's awesome.
Matters.
And that's got to make you feel good, right? I mean,
It makes you feel good to be able to be in a position to help, for sure.
and sometimes it's not just about the dollars and cents. And we
Yeah.
always talk about that on the show because it's a show about money, of course, but it's about feeling good. It's about being happy, and if you can help family, I mean, you know, what else are you going to do with your money if you can't help family, right? Bottom line.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now, you bought your house.
Yes, sir.
So I assume you're able to put more money down on the house because of this. So,
Yep.
so let me ask you again. This is the newlywed game, so I can
sure,
ask all these types of questions and get away with it, right? So, did you put down 5%, 10%, 20%? Where were you able to go?
Great question. So we did it what we call the Fresh Start way. So our business is Fresh Start Financial Education. And to answer your question, we suggest families to put down 20% or more towards their home.
That's great. I love it. You know, I always say that really, truly, that's how it used to be, where people would put down 20%, and we got so far away from that. Now it's part of what caused the financial crisis.
Right.
Absolutely.
And by the way, just so you know, Sam, you didn't have to do the shameless pitch for Fresh Start. I was going to ask you about that later. All right, so you did that. You did some travel. Where's
Yes.
the coolest place you've been traveling to since you paid off the debt?
Well, when I met Kirsty, I had never been on a cruise before.
Okay.
So to me, we went on a cruise, even a 7-day cruise, and it's just to be away from the cell phones and just kind of disconnect. And we went to four different
countries.
styles,
Yep.
That's awesome.
That was a lot of fun for me. Yeah.
That's great. Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. So So how did you make this plan over 15 months? I mean,
Yeah.
give us, without getting too far in the weeds, just give us a feel for what you did, boots on the ground, to get focused on this. Stuff that some of our viewers might be able to listen and actually take away and implement when they go home.
Great question. I think the primary thing that we did was we budgeted prior to the pay period, prior to the direct deposit. Kirsty and I would sit down and we budget together. And so we just assigned every dollar to different budget categories. And having that control over your money together, unified, not just me doing it and trying to do it on my own. And when you're married, there's great unity. You can make greater traction when you're on the same page. So I think for me that was primary.
And then also minimizing our expenses. So
Yes.
looking at every area where we were spending and figuring out how we could cut back and spend
Absolutely.
less to use that difference to go towards the debt.
Yeah,
Yeah, it helps when you're a couple and you're in it together.
absolutely.
You know, if one person's, it's like anything else. It's like if two people smoke and one wants to stop smoking, it's harder when the other one doesn't.
Right.
You know, so
Right.
Yeah.
that's great.
Yes,
So you
sir.
focused on together. You got the debts under control.
Yes, sir.
Were you able to pay it off in a level fashion? Was it really $3,000 a month for 15 months or something like that, or?
It was thousands of dollars per month. I mean, we literally lived off of half of one income. I mean, it was a sacrifice, David.
That's
I mean,
great.
but we had the end in mind. You know, it was a great sacrifice. We had to tell friends no a lot of times when we were asked to go to restaurants or various places.
So for 15 months,
Yes, sir.
hardly a dinner out.
Yes,
You
sir.
know, forget about shopping at Whole Foods and having that. Right, you go right to Publix and you get, you know, it's what you have to do. You
Right.
cut every single corner.
Right.
But now that 15-month sacrifice means that for the rest of your life,
Yes, sir.
you'll be able to enjoy much more financial freedom.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So tell us about Fresh Start. When did the idea about Fresh Start come up? I know what motivated you to start it, but when the idea come up and how'd you implement it, and talk to us about that.
Well, it was almost, we shared publicly online on Facebook our debt-free story. The morning of, when we paid off the student loan, which was the last and final debt, we took a quick picture. And when I took the picture, it went viral, literally. And
Oh, yeah.
we got hundreds and hundreds of messages from friends.
Thousands.
I would say, yeah, you're right. Of people we didn't know that wanted to know, how did you do it? How can we do it? And so we realized there was a greater need, and Fresh Start was
Did you ever
birthed.
realized? Yeah.
Yes. And
Wow.
the company, we birthed Fresh Start Financial Education from that need. And we've been on and helping people ever since.
That's great. Right after the break, we're going to have you back. We're going to ask you more about Fresh Start.
Sure.
And I want to ask you specifically about some of the techniques that you recommend when it comes to paying off debt and getting people in a better financial situation. So we have one more segment together. Looking forward to it. And you stay with us too. We'll be right back after the commercial break with many more words of wisdom from my new friends Samuel and Kirsty. We'll be right back. If you're near or in retirement, head over to theincomegeneration.com and download your special report written specifically for the needs of the income generation. Again, those born before 1966. I'm David Scranton, and you've been watching The Income Generation.
Hello, I'm Miranda Kahn, and this is your Newsmax Finance Update. Let's take a look at some of the stories that moved the markets this week. Obamacare insurers in New York and Washington State are now asking for double-digit rate hikes next year. The insurance providers in those two states say repealing the individual mandate and uncertain changes to the healthcare system are the two biggest factors. Companies in New York are asking for an average of 24% rate hike, while Washington insurers are requesting for a little more than a 19% hike. Mexico says it's imposing a 20% tariff on U.S. pork imports. Officials tell Reuters that they don't expect the move to affect pork prices in Mexico because there are many alternatives to U.S. suppliers. This comes after the Trump administration imposed steel and aluminum tariffs on steel and aluminum from Mexico, Canada, and the EU. And Starbucks announces that executive chairman Howard Schultz will step down June 26. Schultz stepped down as CEO last year and will leave the coffee chain he's been in for nearly 40 years. The announcement is fueling speculation that the 64-year-old might run for president and 2020. And as always, for much more on these stories, visit newsmax.com/finance. Now let's get back to the income generation with David Scranton.
So exactly what are some things that you can start doing right away to get a better handle on debt if you feel you're carrying too much debt as retirement approaches? Well, the first step sounds obvious, but that's simply to make a priority out of paying down debt. Let's face it, many Americans have already been doing this in recent years, which is one of the reasons the economy has struggled so long and it's been so difficult for it to recover. Consumers simply haven't been spending. They've been trying to save and pay down debts. But for some of the reasons we've already discussed, stagnant wages, increasing cost of living, healthcare expenses, etc., it remains a struggle. But if you must prioritize on one thing, saving or paying down debt within 10 to 15 years of retirement, please make it paying down debt. In particular, make a priority of paying off any high-interest credit cards before further funding your retirement accounts. Unless, of course, it's a 401k contribution that your employer is matching, because that's just basically free money. Second, if you've been lax about having and sticking to a budget, get strict, get focused. Make sure especially to set tight dollar limits on things like entertainment, food, clothing, and gifts you may want to give but don't really need to. Too often, those are the kinds of things that cause credit card debt to just balloon out of control. Even when you're young, that's a bad situation, but when you're nearing retirement, it's that much worse. And speaking of getting strict, here's another smart but sometimes difficult move you should make. Stop financially supporting your adult children. According to a recent Pew Research Center poll, nearly 61% of American parents had provided financial support to an adult child in the last 12 months. If your grown children need financial help, let them be the ones to take on the debt. They have much more time to earn money, to pay it down. Your retirement income should go toward your goals in maintaining the lifestyle you want, not paying off their debts, or ideally not paying off any debts. Another step that can help is to downsize. Most retirees do this anyway, but consider doing it in such a way that one of your goals is to end up with a significant savings or windfall that can help you pay off your debts in a lump sum. And this may go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Be especially careful about taking on any more debt. And that includes agreeing to request a co-sign student loans or other types of loans. Please keep in mind, you have less time and probably fewer resources to pay back loans if the principal primary borrower falls short. Now, of course, as you probably know, a common strategy for the elimination of non-mortgage debt is to get a reverse mortgage. And I've discussed reverse mortgages on previous shows, and the bottom line is this. In my experience, they should be used only as a last resort. Debt consolidation is another strategy that can potentially help reduce your debt load. But the payment plans typically come with strict stipulations, so it's important to be sure you'll be able to meet those stipulations. And of course, some of these strategies require professional help to implement. In any case, as I've stressed a couple of times now, I believe your odds of reducing your debt burden as you near retirement are greatly increased if you enlist the help of an advisor that specializes in retirement income as soon as possible. So now it's time to welcome back one final block, Samuel and Kirstie O'Banner. So let's talk about that then. What types of strategies do you find work the best for people?
Unity, first and foremost, being together, minimizing expenses. Kirstie's excellent at that. I mean, she changed where we shop for groceries, shaved our grocery bill down by in half, basically.
Yep. So definitely minimizing expenses,
for sure.
Budgeting together. We ordered our debts from smallest to largest and just attacked each one, in order, and just used the momentum from, paying off one to go towards the next, and just kept it going until we got to the last one.
Now, I bet some of those things that you did at that time created habits after 15 months.
Oh, absolutely.
That even though now you can afford to spend more money being debt-free,
absolutely.
I bet some of those habits still stick. and they're making you even more financially sound
Yeah.
since you paid off the debt, correct?
Right.
Yeah, that's what we tell people. This is not just until you eliminate debt. This is a lifestyle.
Right.
So this is not just for a short period of time. This is for the rest of your lives. We still have those budget meetings. We have those periods every 2 weeks. And so this is a lifestyle, and we still minimize expenses. We call various companies to try to say, hey, our bill's too high. What do you help us out?
Great, I love it. So you know, it's funny, as you know, my book is entitled Return on Principle.
Yes,
So I'm a big fan of, you know, focusing on principles when it comes to your investing and not deviating from your own principles. And what happened is this sounds like it got you back to some of your basic principles, maybe principles that your parents taught you, but then you got a little bit away from it maybe as you got older, and now you're back to it. So what are the most important principles for people to adhere to get the right mindset so that when they pay off the debt, they don't go back to it? Just like when you're on a diet. If some people go on a diet and they gain the weight back.
Right.
But it's got to be a change of lifestyle. So tell me about what the 2 or 3 most important principles are to get people debt-free and to keep them debt-free that they
Right.
should be able to adopt, hopefully.
Great question, David. Our faith has been a huge part of this whole process. There's a scripture in Proverbs 22, verse 7, says that the borrower is slave to the lender. And so that right there, number one, is we didn't want to be slaves to anybody. We wanted to be free financially and in every way. So that, to me, is number one.
Right.
Driving factor, motivating factor.
Right. And just deciding that going into debt and borrowing is not the only way to make purchases, especially large purchases. I know, you know, we both had car payments and things like that back in our borrowing and, you know, debt days. Because
absolutely.
we didn't know that we didn't really think about the fact that you could purchase, you know, a car without financing it and making payments and those things. So just making a decision to not borrow and to eliminate debt if you have acquired it as quickly as possible.
You know, on a previous show a while ago, I talked about a client of mine from the Middle East that I had acquired maybe almost 30 years ago. He's a great gentleman. His name's Iraj. And Iraj said he didn't have any debt. And then all of a sudden, he's talking in a later portion of our interview about car payments. And I said, well, wait a minute, you said you didn't have any debt. He goes, well, you see, and part of it's because the culture doesn't believe in debt. So he says, you know, he goes, well, what I do is I figured out a long time ago that if I'm going to have a car payment my entire life, I'd rather save the money in advance for the next car than pay it off in arrears. And he figured out back then with higher interest rates that he could actually get a car that's about a third more expensive for the same dollars by saving in advance than paying it off in arrears and paying the interest. So he's earning interest instead of paying it.
Right.
And again, that made it a great lifestyle habit. So in 15 seconds or less, final words of wisdom for our income generation viewers about debt.
I would say definitely have an end goal in mind. And you don't have to be in bondage to debt any longer. And Kirsty and I are definitely here to help. You can visit us at www.freshstartfinancialeducation.com.
You just made my sales pitch easier. I didn't even have to give that information. I love it. That's great.
I didn't.
Thank you so much for being with us. It's
Thank
been
you.
absolutely wonderful. I hope people learned a lot from you. You had a lot of great things to say. And you stay with us too. We have a lot more here on The Income Generation. We'll be right back after the break. As you're probably aware, many huge businesses that have become enormously successful got started by borrowing money, in other words, by incurring debt. But you'd probably also agree it would be completely crazy to borrow money to gamble it at the casino. In a way, that comparison highlights the difference between real investing and what most people think of as investing when they have their money in the stock market. In other words, it's like the difference between the owner of a football team counting on his team winning the next game and a fan betting that the team will win on FanDuel. Both the owner and the fan, yes, they both have vested interest in the team winning, but that's where the similarity ends. Why? Because the owner of the team has some influence over its performance, some level of control. The fan betting on the game has no control. He's only betting. And that's pretty much the same difference as when an investor, like Warren Buffett, who buys majority shares in a company, and everyday investors who are minority shareholders. Warren Buffett has a seat on the board and a measure of control over how that company performs. However, as a minority stockholder, most of the rest of us have simply no control at all. Now, sure, you may have studied the company and feel confident about its future, just as that football fan has studied the teams and the players and feels confident that he's bet on the right one. But at the end of the day, with no control, it is just a bet, a gamble, and nothing else. Now, I share that because when I discussed strategies for dealing with retirement debt earlier in the show, you may have noticed I did not recommend borrowing money to go to the casino. The fact is, borrowing money for something that's a potential investment, like a football team or starting your own business, might just make sense. But borrowing money for something you know is going to depreciate, like a car, or is temporary, like a meal, makes literally no sense at all. In fact, that might in some ways be worse than borrowing money to go to the casino. In the casino, at least you have a chance of winning. But again, that's still definitely not the action you want to take as you try to get a handle on your debt. Rather, you want to develop a financial strategy for managing debt and then moving forward with secure principal and enough income to meet your retirement goals and to grow your portfolio organically. And that's why an income-based approach to retirement planning makes so much more sense if you're dealing with debt, and even if you're not in today's uncertain economic climate. It makes sense. Why? Because it's a strategy and not a gamble, which again is the last thing you want to do if you're trying to get a handle on your debts and you want them to stop in retirement. Now time to welcome our next guest, Greg Sullivan. Greg is principal, president, and CEO of the Virginia-based advisory firm Sullivan, Bryett, Sparrows, and Blaney. He co-founded the firm in 1991, has over 35 years of investment management and financial planning experience. He's the author of a new book entitled Retirement Fail: The 9 Reasons People Flunk Post-Work Life and How to Ace Your Own. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
You know, I've written a couple books myself, as you know, and it takes a lot of work to do so. So tell me, what motivated you to write this book?
You know, I had a lot of experience, and I felt it was a great way to help create better conversation with our clients. And, you know, as you're going through these challenges, people are making decisions or running into life events. And I thought that sometimes the best way to do it is for someone to have something they go home and read, connect with, and then we can get back together and have a deeper conversation about the issue. So it was really more about creating better awareness and better communication on issues that impact people in their retirement.
Now, you point out that it's not, in most cases, poor portfolio performance that causes people's retirement problems, but it's poor emotional decisions. Can you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, so if you manage your portfolio in the manner we talk about in the book, which is just a brief part of the book conversation, generally performance is really not our issue. But you have things like buying second homes, not letting your kids grow up and getting out of the nest, life events that can come about, such as divorce or a death or disability in the family that really impacts what your financial wherewithal was, unpredictabilities that come along that, you know, maybe you just weren't preparing for. Many of those things you could have been preparing for, people oftentimes are just ignoring them.
Burying their head in the sand. You know, in the 30 seconds we have left in this block, tell us about burying the head in the sand. What effects have you seen? That seems to be almost the biggest. It's kind of an emotional decision.
It really is. And probably one of the biggest ones, and one of the chapters I loved the best, was about children. And people just kind of assume, and they kind of just say, hey, my kids need me, I love them, and therefore they just take care of them. And they lose the perspective that it's ready for the children to move on their own.
And that's when those tough emotional decisions that you were talking about. In fact, as you heard earlier on the show, I actually warned people of that, saying, stop helping your kids. If your kids have problems, let them take on the debt. They have longer to pay it off. So we need to take a quick commercial break, Greg. We'll be right back with more from Greg Sullivan. And you stay with us too. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back. We're talking again with Greg Sullivan, the author of Retirement Fail: The 9 Reasons People Flunk Post-Work Life and how to ace your own. So, Greg, obviously we're doing a show today on debt with people focused on people at or near retirement, and we know it's a bigger problem than ever before. What's your experience? Do you find, like I do, that is it more of an earlier age problem? Is it more of a later age pre-retirement problem? Where do you see most of the mistakes happening?
Well, a lot of debt happens certainly earlier on, right? When people are accumulating assets, and as people are getting closer and closer to retirement, they start to be paying off debt. But that's actually one of the places that people can get tripped up, right? They're not paying it off quickly enough, or they have a surprise event. They have accumulated this debt, and a surprise event happens with a disability or a loss of a job or a death in the family or a child that needs additional help, and then they can't get themselves out. And that's where debt becomes a problem when it deals with retirement.
So the 9 reasons that people flunk retirement success, one of them's bad emotional decisions. What's another one?
Well, you have dealing with crazy things, even the fact that you're an entrepreneur or you've retired or you're about to retire, but you take on an entrepreneurial bent. Take a great example. You have a child who decides, oh, I want to start this clothing store or this fashion item or a coffee shop. And they come to you as mom and dad and say, hey, can you help me get this thing started? And then you go and you help them. And let's say it gets to be successful. And the next thing you know, you're helping them buy a home. And then you take on the debt with the home. And everything looks like it's going great until you have a great recession. And then the Great Recession comes and it starts to go downhill. So
I could say in some ways that's taking too much risk with some things later on in life, with financial decisions. Give me one more before we wrap up today.
Well, divorce, right? So divorce becomes a surprise. You know, the fastest growing segment of people getting divorced are people over age 50. So people in their 50s and 60s and 70s that are now getting divorced, where maybe in a generation before we weren't seeing it as much. Now we have a faster growth in divorce going on. And that income and pool of assets you had now has to be divided by 2 households. It becomes really stressful on the family.
Well, the tough part about that is, what are you going to do? Nobody plans to get divorced. So I think the only answer is really to save twice as much, right? You save twice as much just in case. And if you retire and you're still together, well, then hallelujah, you have twice as much money.
Well, it's a savings issue, but it's also a transparency and an honesty issue and an awareness issue of saying, hey, let's be aware that, maybe sometimes these relationships may not work out.
Of course. Great. Thank you for being on the show. It's been my pleasure. You stay with us. We'll be right back with more on The Income Generation. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of our guests for joining us for another episode of The Income Generation. I'd also like to thank you, our new and returning viewers. It's funny, as a culture, we seem to have this love-hate relationship with debt. From the time we get that first credit card offer as a teenager, we're sent a lot of mixed messages about positive and negative aspects of carrying debt. Some debt, we're told, is good, even necessary to establish a credit rating. Some debt, as we mentioned earlier, like a mortgage or a business loan, might make sense because it's an investment that ideally will appreciate in value as we're paying it off, thereby creating equity. Most business would never get off the ground without debt, and the entire lending industry has become a necessary cornerstone of our economy. But in light of all that, debt is more socially acceptable than it has been in past generations. Even our government seems hardly concerned at all about the massive debt that it carries. But at the end of the day, the reality is this: debt can do real damage, and it often does. As we learned on today's show, more Americans near and at retirement age than ever before are struggling with debt, and for some of them, it may pose a real threat to their retirement goals. But that doesn't have to be the case for those willing to take action. And that doesn't mean heading for the casino either. It means reaching out as soon as possible to a qualified financial advisor who specializes in an actually strategic approach to retirement planning based upon protection and income. Thanks for watching. If you're close to retirement and you really want to know how to protect and maximize your money, it's absolutely essential that you stay informed and up to date. And right here is where you can do it on the Income Generation. I'm David Scranton, and thanks again. We'll see you next week. If you're not using someone who's well trained in fixed income and you're born before 1966, it may just be time for you to break up with that advisor and move on. I would suggest someone who will care for you through these important years of your life. If you need help finding someone, call or write us. I'd also like to remind you of the special report entitled The Income Generation. This is available free to you, our loyal viewers, online. If you haven't downloaded your report, pick it up after the show. If you're near or in retirement, head over to theincomegeneration.com and download your special report written specifically for the needs of the income generation, again, those born before 1966. I'm David Scranton, and you've been watching The Income Generation. We'll see you all next Sunday.